So this is me drawing, trying to make a composition. I did like an initial sketch, and this is me just kind of like drawing it again. Usually when I draw things, and I come up with like a idea that I want, I will draw it maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times just to kind of like keep tweaking it over and over and comparing each thumbnail. So in this one, I decided to go for like a more upward perspective on the female figure, and all these red lines is kind of just like charting like the negative space and like the geometry, I suppose, in the negative space. Um, when I draw figures, I generally start with like the head. I don't really do uh, gestures or anything unless I'm like working from a reference. If it's just from my imagination, I kind of go like limb by limb, which isn't like the academic way to do it, but I enjoy it. So here I am just trying to like make the male figure a little bit more dynamic. My go-to thing is to like bend the limbs at right angles. That, or it'll be like the female, where like the arm is like cutting across the torso. So it's either like strong angles or overlaps. And I just made a note to myself to kind of try and keep the perspective consistent. I'm using Krita, and I don't really understand it all that well yet, so I'm kind of like screwing around with like the windows and the view and all of that. Anyway, this is just like an indication of like more angle stuff, trying to get like a stronger perspective. Things like this I just kind of like wing it and hope it works out okay. Um, I've done 2 figure drawing classes, and so I don't know anatomy like in a super detailed way, but I've kind of just developed like a gut sense of like this looks wrong and this looks right. So it's not accurate, but it's passable. Um, yeah, and it doesn't like trick the eye too much. I guess it's exaggerated, but it's still like accurate to what the human anatomy is. So I liked this a lot. I kind of thought I was going in the right direction with this. So I drew even more lines, like connecting like both the heads, where the female figure's like arm kind of leads into where the male figure leg like runs off at. Uh, yeah, just like all these like little like leading lines and points and stuff. I noticed that there was like 2 opposing triangles in the composition, which is neat. Using like the male figure's leg as like a base, and then the female figure's shoulders, they kind of like each like lead into each other, which I like stuff like that. So anyway, this is me just comparing each sketch and kind of like reflecting. Um, yeah, and then I start in with a new one. I think at this point I started like copy and pasting. Yep, yep, yeah. And what's cool about brainstorming digitally is that you can do stuff like this, just copy and paste. Because when I sketch traditionally, I kind of fall into the pit of like trying to like perfectly like recreate past lines and arcs and stuff, but if I can just copy it, then it's all good. Here, I was extending the male's torso because I realized that like it was like really wonky. And now I'm just kind of like sketching in the legs. I don't really care about like how nice it looks right now, I'm just kind of getting like the initial vibe. So, we'll see. Yep, I put the foot over. I do that a lot. I'll like draw arrows, or I'll like write, like jot down notes and stuff. It's just how I think. Um, and then I kept redoing this leg, his left leg, for a while. So, I don't know if it's possible to just like, um, have your legs like that, like one kind of like facing outward horizontally, the one kind of like twisted over it, crossed over it. I doubt that's like anatomically possible or even comfortable physically, but it looks cool. And I mean, that's all I care about. The trick I've come up with is like if you have like really obvious joints, like kneecaps, elbows, ankles, stuff like that. If you have obvious like connecting parts, so people know like the segments of the limb, they'll kind of like believe it can go anywhere because they can like see it for themselves, like different parts and stuff. This female figure sucked. I didn't like her. I liked that arm a lot, and I lost that arm. Yeah, her like hip felt really like tense, like her like bones were locked almost. So I just kind of like scrapped and started over on her. Yeah, and then I think I even twisted that arm later because it still wasn't like horizontal enough. I wasn't sure what to do with her hand, um, so I just kind of like was whatever with that. And then the lower portion of her body really gave me grief for a bit. Yep, there we go, moving her arm. Probably way too long, but whatever. So yeah, there's her torso. Yep, I moved her leg in. And then I just drew her legs for like, I don't even know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. This whole video, it's actually like 45 minutes long, but I split it up a bunch. So yeah, this whole thing was like really making me mad. I didn't know what to do. So I just kept just drawing at random and hoping that it would end up looking nice. I remember liking how that back foot looked, but it just did not work with like the vibe of the piece. And then yeah, that didn't work out like the straight across, so I bent the knee and that seemed to help. I think because her right foot, the one that's like straight, is like carrying all the weight. So if her knee is bent, it kind of feels like her like other leg is like swinging forward like with that momentum. If that makes sense. That could be totally like wrong. It's just kind of like intuitively like my sense of things. And then the rest of this, I was really into this composition that I made and the poses, and I thought that I worked it out nicely. So the rest of this is me just like plotting out all the different shapes and connecting lines like I did before. I also gave him another arm, kind of like, yeah, I thought that was pretty awesome because it needed something to like bridge the two figures. I don't like that hand, it's kind of like a fist. I'll probably go back and like loosen that up. Yeah, I was pretty stoked about this. Yeah, and then the rest is just me, you know, going crazy with all these different triangles. I don't know why I use triangles so much. They just is the shape that comes up the most when I sketch figures. But yeah, so there's one triangle from each head, one from her arm, one from his arm. So it all kind of like bleeds together. And then I did, yeah, I called it internal geometry for each of the individual figures. So his legs, his arms, the whole figure itself, and then into her as well. Yep, that implied line. So the negative space between your two hands, her back leg bent, and then yeah, her whole figure as well. So that's pretty much it. That's kind of how I got from the first sketch. Oh yeah, here it is. I thought the way these hands ended up were pretty cool. It's like a yin and yang type thing. But yeah, so here I am just going back and looking at how it developed. But yeah, that's that.